Hello and welcome. Today, I'm joined by Sylvain Roy, who is an IP and technology lawyer and valuation specialist with 3 decades of experience. He's a managing partner of SRA, a boutique firm focused on IP transactions, valuation, and licensing, and also a founder of SR Valuations Incorporated, deploying a proprietary benchmark-based framework for early-stage venture valuation. Sylvain, welcome to the Growth Switch.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for hosting me today.
Pleasure. Between the law practice that you have and additional business, it would be great to hear your origin story. How did you get into the law and what made you start additional venture in parallel to your work as well?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I started about 30 years ago, but business, let's say, environment was quite different at the time, as you can imagine. So, but the great thing that I remember is that in the early 90s, it was as exciting as it is now. It was the early days of PC. Montreal was steaming with software innovation, software development. We had the first CGI system that were developed in Montreal. So, obviously, the natural thing to do with me as a young lawyer of 2 years of practice was to create a startup, a tech startup. And at that time, we were and again, because you can, let's get into something difficult. So we managed to start into interactive robotic controls. That's something that is hardly done nowadays, especially if you follow self-driving cars. And so far, it took a while, but we were doing it with Pentium PC from 1995. And of course, the robot was less complicated than a car. It was like a robot for the stage for live performances, so that you could have all the setup of the show control even by the performers. And but that was an entry point into tech, into a very ambitious tech, raising a lot of money with VCs, and we participate in the entire industry going down in 1999, unfortunately. So where it comes from, my angle at business, also at my legal profession, all boils down to group experience into try to create ideas, monetize ideas, be extremely ambitious, be cutting edge in terms of technique, and pushing the boundaries. The difficulty is to align the business with these objectives to make a genuine economic success. Well, like in many things, it rarely works on the first time. I mean, especially with entrepreneur, if you're 25, start your first business, first group experiment with tech, you need to have a lot more experience to make it through. So I use that to become an advisor in tech, more generally in IP, in Asia, in Singapore, also in Hong Kong. That was very good years to be there, and that brought me as well to become an IP broker in Switzerland. Because it was one of the nicest place on earth, still is. But on these years, it was booming. All trading companies were there, and it became natural to try to add an activities that was providing more upside than purely selling time, and that was amazing to be there, to work closely with all the big players in electrical engineering at one point. And the context was not easy at that time for IP. So I finally start a research center around some of the technologies that we had on contract for incubation, and became very good at valuation, because the first thing you do as a broker is that you receive tens of proposals every day, sometimes, or every week. You need to be able to sort through that. So it's down to process. What kind of process allows you to pick probably the opportunities with the lowest risk, biggest rewards? And so that was the start of a valuation career that I maintained throughout, even though I'm back in the law seat in Canada. And that allows me to basically look at any project or mandates first through the lens of law, but also through the lens of what's the business context, how can we position, how can we create value, how can we document that we have an increased value. And that solves a lot of the hurdles from a business point of view in the relationship with investors, suppliers, stakeholders.
I think it's It's very interesting, some of the personal traits that you demonstrated through your journey, because I think as a group, lawyers are typically risk averse, and that's why we don't see many lawyers and entrepreneurs. So I think that that's always a very interesting combination.
Yes.
But also, especially in IP law, I think a lot of IP lawyers tend to be introverted. And for you to build a network and work in different geographies in Switzerland, in Asia, that's required a great deal of building the network and being out there. I'm wondering, based on your experience, how much do you think some of those personal qualities is something that maybe you had from the beginning, and how much of that you had to develop over the years?
That's a good point. I think the all this path became feasible because I broke a leg. I
Mm.
broke a leg at law school in the middle of a session,
Mm-hmm.
playing sport with there with the team, and I had to stay home for almost 2 months. I missed a lot of time at school with the teachers, and my grades suffered. And I could not qualify over there for the second, let's say, the master degree I had already in mind and was partly written up. And that kind of closed the door at that time for big law.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you be ambitious outside big law when you start a practice? And that was the first aspect. The second aspect was Montreal it's an amazing place, but it's a small business market.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can you come if you are interested to other places in the world where you cannot operate as a traditional lawyer, obviously? What do you do? So it was a mix of limitation and curiosity that led me to embrace obviously the more complex world of if you need to know science a little bit, finance and legal all the same time, you can't be a jack of all trades.
Mm.
So you still add situation specific skills and a tool set that goes into the legal aspect, the IP aspect, but you cannot apply it to every field. So I'm really good in software. Now AI is natural, but it came from my industrial experience that really fed the kind of law I can practice. I don't practice in, let's say, pharma at all. At all.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a field I'm familiar with enough, even if I had engaged with several mandates in the field. But I don't consider a field that I'm. So you need to choose.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be choosy. You need to know why you do things. For me, it was my practice allow me to feed my personal life and not the opposite.
Mm.
My practice brings me where personally I want to go, not the opposite.
How much of that journey do you feel? Because to your point, not everything works on the first try. Sometimes you need
Yeah.
iteration. Sometimes there are ups and downs. How much of that, bringing your life into the practice has been intentional, and how much of that been just recognizing some of the opportunities, whether it's a contacts or opportunity to build a network throughout your career? How important was it to be flexible with different changes throughout?
Yeah, you start with tons of energy, so that's for sure. Not a ton and at that time you cannot claim you're a Bitcoin billionaire and all these distractions, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So you add pure business people, pure entrepreneur, not wannabes, and there was no easy way. There was no easy way to find a client, and I think it boils down to that. You cannot be good in a silo. You need to test your ideas. And sometimes, as a first entrepreneur, you wait until you're perfect, or you polish your value proposition. And the experience comes with no, you have an idea. Let's knock on a door. Let's knock to a client's door. Let's knock to your competitor's door. Let's test your idea as soon as possible. And I think that as you grow more experienced, or I will not say older, but more aged, you realize the time is not a commodity. The time is short. You need to be able to spin. You need to be able to test, and do not wait until every light is green before you push all your energy. Your energy, especially as a younger entrepreneur, is your currency.
Mm-hmm.
Use it, because without it, if you know too much, you don't move, you don't act. You know the risk. So the risk freezes you. And what is, I think, so amazing later on is that if you have a bit of experience, if you can connect with people with different vibe, you find spots where you can add value, and you stay in that, and you're part of an ecosystem. And that's what I've been doing with valuation recently, and authoring books and these kind of things. It's just participating into the conversation with a certain angle, and this angle's from obviously from a lot of experience that were not necessarily fully conclusive. But
Hmm.
and again, what is success? I mean, success is everything you do that allow you to stay alive, to still operate as well as an economic entity that is not hurt. So the thing is, never put all your eggs as well. Make sure that if you are on your personal safety, economic safety is on the line, you can't think properly.
Hmm.
So you need to find a way to either find backers or being successful first before you start on a journey of entrepreneurship.
I think that's a very interesting take because in a game of business, there is no grand finale. You win the game of business by staying in business, to your point. As long as you survive and you have backers or the business carries on, that's success. But I think in the legal profession, quite often to a case, there is a finality of it. You can finish the case, you can win a trial, you can submit what you need to submit. And I think for a lot of lawyers, being able to switch between those different mental models sometimes create a barrier. And to
Completely.
your, please go ahead.
And it's an awful thing to be a lawyer, to be honest. To be honest, the problem we have as a lawyer is that if you're, I mean, we all want our client to succeed. Most of us are highly competitive, but we end up in places where we have absolutely no control over our lives. Overworked, over-engaged, over-committed to work, over-committed to the material goods that we need to display to keep on the race. We don't need that in reality. But it's realize what's the main driver. If you really like the legal argument, if you really like the legal world, that's what I'm saying. That's very useful. But if you can't keep up with competition, you just need to find a space that allows you to be you. For me, for personally, I need to have control over my. Now I'm going on 3 weeks holiday. So for our US audience, yes, as a self-employed, I go on 3 weeks holiday, and that's about it. There's a connection with the client. You need to. I mean, I have clients that understand that of course, there's availabilities, but if I cannot do that at my age, after 30 years of practice, what's the point? What's the point of all these efforts, right?
Right.
So success is has to be defined by you only. Only you can define success.
For sure. And I think more lawyers have to be intentional about it. They actually need to spend time to focus on that. But I want to talk about something that you mentioned earlier, that nobody should try to be a jack of all trades, that it's important to be a specialist. And I think we live in a very dangerous times because of AI. It's very tempting to deep into different areas and get a feeling that
Mhm.
you're an expert, but that can be very deceptive. In your personal practice, how do you treat the information that is accessible while being disciplined to focus on where you have expertise and maybe disregard everything outside or not to venture into areas
Yeah,
that
very good question. And I think it boils down to processes as well. Whenever you do use AI, or I use AI within the context of good templates process I've been performing in the past, the odds are increasing that I will speed up work. Obviously, I will share part of the let's say economy of scale to the client in terms of economy part of it. Whenever I find something new, the first thing first will be to okay, the currency we have as lawyer is the confidence of our client,
Mhm.
not to be spent wisely. And so if my client asks me something that is new to me, first thing is I tell him this is absolutely new to me. I can go on a best effort because I know your business. I will use this tool, this tool, this tool. Are you comfortable with my scope of work.
Mm.
And the point is you manage expectation. Then if you use AI, at least one of the things I do in my agentic setup, for example, is or in my use of AI at scale with valuation, I try to have very high threshold. For example, same input, same output, which is extremely difficult with AI. If you are satisfied in a field you don't know with a response from AI, you're an idiot, because try on a new session 20 minutes later, the answer will be maybe not radically different, but with enough delta of variance to make you rethink reporting to client on the basis of a single session. So, and that's the point. If I do corporate law, things like that, one session sometimes is enough because I'm comfortable enough. In any other field, especially with anything related to government relationship,
Mm-hmm.
compliance, these aspects that are, if you're not super familiar with, that might seem okay. I understand, but sometimes there's a way to turn things around that are a bit more specific, and AI doesn't provide you with that necessarily. So, what I think is, if you're in a new field, you use AI, fiddle with it much more just to understand the variance in output, and if you don't feel comfortable understanding why is there different output, just maybe not think about reverting to client and saying that it's outside my comfort zone, and I refer somebody else.
Certainly. First of all, just to highlight it, I think the ability to sometimes say, I don't know, this is new information, we need to investigate, is a lost art. And I think this is something we have to bring back because it makes for more honesty between lawyers and their
Oh,
clients,
yeah.
just like in any other relationship. Everybody has the same level of expectations, and usually that turns out to be better for the relationship and for the end result. But I also like this concept of seeing if the output is different and seeing how consistent it is. Because in our practice, for example, in our marketing business, quite often we will have a client come with ideas saying, AI told me to do this, so that must be the strategy. And quite often when we investigate, it is the output that they get by giving a very limited input to begin with. And if we give different input that better describes their circumstances, the output can be not consistent with the initial recommendation. It could be something very different. My question for you is, in your relationship, we as a lawyers and in different businesses, we have to use AI and get consistent output on our end. But also, how do you work with the clients that might be, second guessing the advice, or they might be doing their own sort of homework to investigate your recommendation, and they have their own inputs and outputs? How do you manage that?
I've skimmed through clientele, and first of all, any input they provide me that is AI generated is bollocks. I say, I revert to clients and said, why do you do that to me? Why do you do that to me? I mean, either you believe that I can provide you with an answer, but and you respect my time, my highly paid time. But if you provide me with something you barely understand, that will need minutes of hours going through, then I will need to convince you that what you provide me is not useful. All this time spent in my life is gone. Of course, I
Mm-hmm.
will charge you, but it's not useful time. So I think that, and this is especially true, for example, in agreement, in contracts. Contracts architecture is not something people understand very clearly in usual. A patent application is something else. A technology description, a claim construction, sometimes we're narrower the field. That could be helpful from a client point of view, but the client has to acknowledge that every sentence is true
Mm-hmm.
on a given patent application draft generated by AI. So on this basis, it's workable, but otherwise, I think that it's very difficult to be trusted. For example, AI generated summary of discussion cannot be provided as is. A client needs to go back to every sentence. So one way around this aspect of AI output provided by client to either to challenge your fees, challenge the time, is to pinpoint that he needs to validate every aspect of his output.
Mm-hmm.
And usually clients don't like that because they said, well, I just doubled the time I spent on feeding you. said, yes, exactly, because I want to hear from your mouth. I want to hear how you express your ideas, how you express the facts, and from the facts, we'll build something together. But we do not want something in between this discussion about the facts and what you can express as your objective in terms of business.
I think part of that is also cyclical in nature, how clients adopt the technology and how that relationship changes, whether it's, double the time to verify maybe the output that's not so helpful or something else. You had experience earlier in technology, and do you think there's almost like a cycle? You can see the early adopters, kind of the mass market adopting it, and maybe something else. Is there something that's happening in the intersection of legal world and AI right now that makes you go, that's one of those, I've seen this before, it's a pattern repeating itself?
Well, it's a different animal. It's an extremely different animal, and it's I fear a little bit. Okay, because you can do so much as a new adopter. It's not like something like video editing. I mean, you can see what you can do. It's relatively limited, but here you can do so much, but you can depart from either reality or things that are really useful or things that are core to the subject matter under discussion. And sometimes, at least you need to have a validation of sources, validation of inference, and whatever you work with AI, and people don't do that usually, and they should, is to make sure as the AI, tell me specifically, item per item, what was inferred, what was the logic of inference, what was from source, and bring me to the source, document the source. I think that's really basic. So I think we need to implement as well as lawyer, and that's a great aspect. I think that's an additional layer to the practice, that is helping client use data, safeguard data, safeguard their tools, make sure that even in my legal practice, I have basic files, governance files that I provide sometimes to client to help them out either with their agent set up, their governance, specification, input specification, output, safeguarding. So there's many different files that I provide them to address specific issues. And what is good is that it allows the practitioner, it allows me to discuss with the technology people or the product people or the back end people, not only the legal project manager or CEO in many instances. And I think it broadens the discussion, and it kind of brings forth what should be done in terms of data management. And if it comes from the mouth of a lawyer, sometimes that has more weight than coming from people within the organization. So, which is a positive aspect. But we need discipline in everything.
Certainly. I think that also brings a very interesting point that there is almost a new dimension to our work with clients that happen in any business in large, similar to how when Apple introduced the App Store, we had a wave of apps that were coming out. And initially there were, silly by people just trying to figure out how to use this not new technology. Eventually we got, of course, some very big companies coming out of the space. I think what you described about giving the governance files and things of that nature to the clients, it's that new marketplace that's taken place. Because in our work, for example, when we partner with organization, one of the first things we must do is we need to have that standardized input so we can, again, have the consistent output to your previous point. And it's always interesting that sometimes part of that work, developing the document to them, is getting the organization aligned on some measures. Because when something is not written down, there could be a sense in an organization that they all talk about the same things, but actually there are small differences, and that produces a very different outcome, whether it is the objective and how they measure success or how they define maybe their processes. And having them align on that and have the document can be a great exercise, and also that new dimension of the relationship sometimes between lawyer and client, between professional services and their clients. Do you see that becoming an industry standard, that whenever a professional starts working with the organization, there is almost like a master file that they need to create together to be on the same page?
I'm pushing in that direction for sure. I gave a speech recently in Dublin about that, about how can you manage your agentic setup. And it's extremely satisfying as a lawyer because usually we write paper no one reads. It's a great intellectual architecture sometimes that is passed along without anyone noticing. But not more importantly, sometimes the core of the contract is not necessarily implemented in business practice. For example, not all clients build an actionable summary of their contractual setup. And with the agentic, with the governance aspect, what is great because it makes you there's some kind of a, let's say, certitude that once it's implemented in the prompt or in the basic file, the machine will read these instructions properly. What I'm saying, almost certain, because there's variation as well. And of course, you need to allow factoring these variation in how you set up the governance files. But it's absolutely, I think that's for once, as a lawyer, we're making sure that what we're saying is properly implemented systematically.
What's the one thing to that end that you wished more of your clients knew before even engaging with you? Is it that preparation? Is it the groundwork for that governance? Is it something else that you think more companies need to be up to speed?
Think less, just call.
Right.
No, it's not because sometimes the issue is when your call at the end of a thought process is very relatively difficult to get back and saying, oh, maybe this assumption was not completely evidence substantiated. So what I like people to call me, will test some ideas, take the time, and after that develop it further and go back to me. But it's good to be part of the early itemization or ideation, just because you make sure that the assumption that client is using are legally sound or sound with the minimally viable product or the monetization strategy or just how you lecture the competitive environment. But client saves time tremendously.
Is there also a role of reduction in the process? Because one of the things we can fear is that with the best of intentions, the clients could start, putting those things into action and actually creating the documentation and processes that were not necessary for the process. Because one of the side effects of AI and agentic AI as well, I think, it made a lot of professionals more efficient, but they start to misuse that efficiency by creating the processes
Yes.
that actually not necessary. Do you have any safeguards from preventing that from happening?
I think we need patience and empathy and patience, recognizing that it's great effort and you need to master the tool in a way sufficiently to making you relevant and any criticism you might have. So I don't think we should criticize this lightly, any effort by client. That it's more like, how can I help you just adjust what you have to make sure that it fulfills your, let's say, degree of quality, reliability, usability, and I think that's part of the conversation. But it needs just a lot of patience, like in anything else.
Good things take time, always.
Exactly, especially things we develop, we build in common, and it's part of the legacy you bring. I mean, you need to be there's generational aspect, there's multicultural aspect. All these are important, and whenever is built, and AI will speed up either the cognitive ability we have and the bias and everything. So
Hmm.
let's just be patient and clean what we have step by step. Let's try not to go fast so much sometimes. I always push for the most speedy approach,
Mhm.
but sometimes, and especially, I like to iterate very fast. But once we decide, okay, this could work, let's do it properly. Then let's do it properly.
Mm, certainly. You mentioned the talk that you did, and when we spoke earlier as well, you said that you believe in authoring white papers, articles, and spreading your experience as well to one, I guess, educate potential
Yes.
clients and the market, but also to promote your practice, your companies as well. How did that exercise for you get started, and how's it going? Do you have any best practices maybe that you'd want to share?
Yes. Well, there's many different associations besides bar, and one of the association most relevant in my field, which is technology monetization and intellectual property, is the Licensing Executive Society, LES. So I participate to LES annual LESI, which is the international aspect of the association, which is also regional and national. And within these, I often speak on annual meetings. And 2 years ago, we were a group of people and started a book on business secret management. And one of the outcome was publication was last year with Springer Nature in Switzerland of a book on how to protect, monetize, and extract value from business secrets, business secret management. So that was published. And that came up following the conclusion by a lot of practitioners that apart from the very large enterprises, clients do not manage their secret properly, either the physical measures, the legal measures, digital measures surrounding the management and protection. And when the book came out, was in the middle of obviously an AI on generative AI beyond image creation that was starting to be usable in terms of business. And we already thought that, okay, there's still a lag because the business community is just starting to digest the aspect of business secret related to patenting, related to IP, and that's not done yet. And now we have AI as another additional layer of complexity. So I think that writing book and sharing ideas through conference, great way to test your ideas, test your angle, and not being shy of spending the time and sometimes publishing something as a contribution is great. But it's great on a personal point of view. It's the business, I will say, is indirect. Very few or no clients come because you write a book directly, but they will trust you more on some issues because you've been writing a book, for good and wrongs. But I think that it's for the positioning, it's great. To expand the business, it's indirect.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, should be done without expectation of a financially tangible outcome.
I think there is obsession in modern day marketers with trying to measure everything and trying to put a number to everything. And in some areas, it's a good thing to do, but in some areas, it removes some of the magic that needed to add, personal touch to the business and make somebody stand out. And to your point, it could be very hard to point out to the book and say that we got, this big client because of this book. But again, building the trust, showing that your expertise, showing that you've done the work that somebody else in the field didn't do, goes further than just same or competing professionals saying that they're excellent and they have so many years of experience. The fact that the effort was taken becomes the difference, even though if directly we can't measure and we can't say that this client came because of the book.
Completely, I agree with you.
What's when you see different ways, so the book being one, talks being the other, what other channels are interesting to you from the personal standpoint that you enjoy participating in? And you also see making a difference between maybe having building your network in different geographies, right? From Canada to Switzerland to Asian markets, to also potentially putting you in front of the latest changes and clients eventually do find it and work with it.
Oh, I think that it comes with maybe not a bit of frustration, maybe not a lot of success in my social life in terms of social networks on LinkedIn. I think that there's a real hazard of being entrapped into either feeding the beast or reacting to the beast, and I think it creates a lot of stress to me at some point. So haven't had a lot of success as an author, let's say posting on X or whatever. And I think for good reason. Maybe the people we are trying to reach are extremely busy as well. So no, I think my role is so far been limited to give lectures at universities or participating in conference, trying to connect slowly through direct personal connection. I've been publishing either blogs on with SRV about valuation, but somehow this has not scaled as much as I will have assumed. So there's a it's a very crowded world there, but maybe video is better. So I'm a bit of a dinosaur in terms. So it's so thanks for hosting me on the podcast, so I can express my ideas.
Of course. I think that the marketing side of legal world is definitely changing. But the good thing that we've seen, to your point about maybe social network, letting a lot of professionals down in terms of the results they get,
Yes.
less so results, a lot of anxiety, whether it's working or not, and the time commitment to stay active. One of the side effects of AI we've seen is that it leveled the playing field. And the professionals that do take time to create materials that are deeply specialized, back to your point that it's
Hmm.
rather than being jack of all trades, it's better to have your area of excellence. AI made it easier for that information to appear in front of the right person. So I think experts that continue to give lectures, continue doing the publications, they will start getting the benefit of that with the latest changes in the
Yes.
marketing, which will benefit the clients and the businesses alike.
Yeah. So in my free time, I develop an agentic system for posting generation that is human in the loop. So it's obviously auto learns stuff like that. But the idea is to be ready for the agent to agent, where no one will read post directly. You'll have agent gathering or summarizing post, and you need to feed this environment accordingly. And I think that's for me that's maybe a little bit more efficient. It's less attractive in terms of what do you read in your holiday, obviously, because it's very mechanical. But you need to be able also to whenever you express yourself a personal point of view, that's more valuable. So than trying to regurgitate just information, summarize of information. So expressing what you live and the contextual rich
Mm-hmm.
feedback based on your personal information will be extremely and will increasingly, I think, valuable, and that needs to be done. Maybe summarizing case lies is less of an issue, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of feedback, and yes, and I think that the discover in English discoverability might increase in an agent to agent rich or saturated social environment. So how do you define the edges that are particular to your practice? You might retain or gain more traction because of these edge when they're expressed in this environment because of you're easier to discover.
Percent. And we definitely see that talking about something that makes your practice uniquely yours, whether it's geography where you practice, the type of cases,
Yes.
or just talking about, your personal experience with something, that definitely works better, when the content, for example, being produced with a human in the loop, than somebody just reiterating the same information that could have come from any place. So adding that personal touch is super important, and I completely agree with you. When it comes to the rest of 2026 for your law practice, for your other business, what are the big things that you're working on that, exciting challenges you've set for yourself?
Yes. Alors, one of there's I'm extremely fortunate. One of these is bringing forth novel tools for biotech funding using donation mechanism, charitable donation mechanism in Canada. So that's something that started at the last of 2025. It's getting traction. We're closing a lot of transaction based on that. So, and it basically allows to a closer academic to industrial relationship, bringing donator in the picture. That's one. The second is the valuation, the startup valuation at SRV that is increasingly distributed globally. Now discussing with Asian countries representative, We're distributed in the UK since early 2026. So, and there's some scale up over there that is extremely exciting, and a lot of work for sure to be performed on this field.
Busy times ahead.
Exactly.
When, if one of our viewers want to learn more about those undertakings that you've taken, where can they find more information online?
Yes, we try to have both website relatively updated. So if you go to srvaluation in one word.com, or you follow or ask for a BVM valuation methodology or BVM method to start a valuation, B being backward valuation, you'll find tons of information on that. In terms of my practice, my boutique firm practice in Montreal, it's sroy.ca. Follows my name, you go to credential and you have a little bit of information on that, and it covers the advisory, non-legal advisory, the valuation, and of course the legal services.
We will make sure to include links as well so our audience is able to find them easily.
Many thanks.
Sylvain, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your experience. It's been great talking to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alex. All the
Thank you.
best.